Restoring the Culture is hosted by Tanya Taylor Rubinstein, story mentor, and Camille Adair, family constellation facilitator. In this podcast, these long-term friends explore how stories serve our lives. Their inquiry meanders into the realms of science, theater, health, and consciousness, moving the individual and global narratives forward as they draw upon their relationship as the laboratory for their experiments in truth. So many of us feel isolated and alone in our deepest longings. Each one of us is necessary in rediscovering the truth of our human story and listening to what is calling us forward so that we can restory the culture together.
Welcome to Restoring the Culture. Today, Tanya and I are going to be talking about restoring business. And I'm going to start with a quote by Lynne Twist, who wrote the book, The Soul of Money. There are no haves and have-nots. We are all haves, and our assets are diverse. In the alchemy of collaboration, we become equal partners. We create wholeness and sufficiency for everyone. I'd love to hear your thoughts on it, Tanya.
Well, thanks for this topic today.
Yeah.
It's amazing to me that it's taken us so long to get here, since I think this is our 14th or 15th podcast. And yet our lives in many ways have been consumed by our business because it's the container, right, for each of our callings, purpose, passion. I love Lynn Twist's quote. I met her many years ago at Bioneers, and I know she's been at Pyaar here in Santa Fe. I love that because I think on a deep spiritual level, there's a sense of we are all halves. Our worth is not based on money. Our worth is valued beyond being qualified or quantified in any way. But I love this piece of in the spirit of collaboration, when each of us is in our right place. Mm-hmm. And when we're able as leaders to facilitate others as well as ourselves into our right place, the incredible magic and alchemy, empowerment, sharing of resources, redistribution of resources that can happen from that place. And what a beautiful way of talking about equity and inclusion.
And I would add to that love, because I've had a recent recognition, a very deep recognition about myself that really, it's as if I'm married. We talk about being married to our work, and that there's such a negative connotation to that in terms of being a workaholic. That's not what I'm talking about. But when your purpose and why you're here, it comes through in a business container, that's a sacred thing. And I feel a lot of love entering into my work and the people that I work with. It's almost like there is an alchemical element that love brings in when you mix love, and I know this is going to sound strange, but I've been thinking about this for a long time. Something about the energy of love and the energy of money, because money is currency like electricity. It's relational.
Absolutely.
And I've been talking about hot pink money, and I've written about it, and there is a very feminine quality to money that, and as currency, as exchange, that has been co-opted and made dirty, right? We think of dirty money and all the things that
and that's very patriarchal.
Totally. Yeah. And I think what we're talking about with restoring business is when business is, it's also personal. Like
Absolutely.
They're not separate from each other.
I couldn't agree more. And I've never resonated with being a workaholic. I work a lot. I might want to work more and more. Like I might spend my whole life working, and there's nothing wrong with me. Because I have such a deep calling, passion. Yeah. I'm excited. I wake up in the morning at 5:30 in the morning. Sometimes I'm awake at 3 in the morning because I have a vision to bring story to the world, to serve more and more people in sharing their stories, because I'm so in love with the process of stories. But also, that excites me more than going to Hawaii or going to Italy. Not that those things aren't wonderful once in a while, but I feel so blessed because my passion resides inside of me. And I know we share this. And when I think about money too, and when money arrives for me as a beautiful, supportive resource for me to support others, for me to support my life, my daughter's life, my husband's life, creative projects, social justice things that I'm passionate about, being able to also just enjoy taking my friends like you out to dinner or when we do a little getaway, all of those things. I've come to think of money as attached. Money comes to me and my business, and yes, they're linked, from love, and also very specifically from desire. The more I let myself have what I desire, meaning connections with people, meaning sexuality, meaning food, meaning speaking exactly the way I want to without editing myself. When I let myself and my desires lead in the world, I allow myself to be seen in a way where money just comes back to me to serve the mission and the purpose. So there's a whole relational thing. And when I'm shut down and not in touch with my desires, or trying to tamp myself down, not giving myself support, having enough team, having enough other collaborators, that's when the money channel shuts off. And it's also when I get depressed or feel isolated or cut off from a part of myself.
I just want to say that we're not talking about amount of money, because there certainly are people in the world who really are suffering because they don't have enough of this currency. And what I want to say is, I don't want to do any kind of like a spiritual bypass by not recognizing that. But I totally agree with you. And I want to say that I think what you're saying is like money is relational. There is a currency.
It's energetic.
It's energetic. And I will never forget when I was, I led a constellation. This was several years ago, and it was in my house. And it was something happened that's never happened before, which was, because it's usually like with a lot of healing gatherings and modalities, it's often women that show up. Well, I was facilitating, and it was all men. There wasn't one. I was the only woman. And somebody wanted to do a constellation about their business. And so we ended up bringing money in, and we were short on representatives. And on occasion, the facilitator will step in to represent something. So I did that. And when I became money, it was so incredible to just feel what it felt like to be money, because I simply was pure relation. I was relational. I was going to whoever could see me.
Value you.
Who could see me, who could value me, who wanted to be in relationship with me. I felt almost a little bit seductive, not sexual, but I felt like you're saying, there was an element of desire there. Like there was this kind of like free-flowing, abundant feeling, and I wanted to play. And I wanted to play with as many people who wanted to play with me. Like the more the merrier. It was really interesting.
I love that. Totally. And I don't mean it at all. Anything I was saying is bypass. For me, it's more about like when I shut off my power, or we shut off our channels of power, I think it's just something we're not available, right? And it's totally relational, as you said. It's available to other people when we're in a collapse, or money or opportunity. I think it's actually all relational. So where am I at with myself in relationship to this? And then how do I allow these things to flow in to support my purpose and vision in my business? And what structures do I use for that? Because I think that's not the opposite, but the companion piece is then with what structures are we allowing these energies to play?
Well, and I know we want to go there in this conversation, but what you just said is reminding me of a couple things. First of all, that money is connected to the same chakra that sexuality and creativity are. It takes me back to what you were saying about being in your power. And I think that's being grounded in that root chakra area of personal power. Mm-hmm. And when we're disconnected from our personal power, it's like the money, the creativity, the sexuality, it's like the valve is shut down or turned down. And you and I have had over the years, because we've seen it both in both of our work in different ways, but it's been such a common thread between us, is how much people who have a trust fund have been cut off from personal power. We see it so many times. You see it in people's writing and their process, and I see it so much in constellation work.
Yeah, and even in relationship to money, I feel that, it's a disservice. It's so interesting, too, because they also have to deal with the dual projection of everybody thinks they have it like made because they have a trust fund. So there's resentment that is often projected on that person. But if you think about it, there is a sense of, and I'm not talking about, of course, it's a tremendous privilege to have some kind of family trust or inheritance, but to have a trust fund that in some ways it's a message of, I can't trust you to be in your own power and take care of yourself. It's a message from the family that you're going to always need to be helped. And so I find women in particular, a few times men, who have this, there's a sense of, I'm not powerful. I'm not strong. I can't make my own money, or this wouldn't have. It's a whole trip around money, right? Where supposedly it's from a place of privilege, and yet from that privilege comes a weakening of the individual's access to their own full-bodied strength rather than a support. Of course, there's times when this is not the case. Of course, there are times when people take it and go start an amazing venture or business. But so often, and more in my experience, it squashes the voice, or there's a sense of confusion. And I'd love to hear what the field has shown about this.
What I've seen in the constellation work in the knowing field is that the family soul gets disrupted because people become confused between the money that was left and their lineage. They think that the money is their lineage and the money will never be their ancestral lineage. But there's confusion about it. And what I've seen happen is that when that is clarified or acknowledged and the orders of love are put in their right order in the field, the people, the ancestors, are so relieved that they're actually being taken as the ancestors, as the lineage, connected in lineage instead of connected in money.
So
because
powerful.
Money is energy, but it isn't soul.
It's not soul, and
and we get confused.
Well, and in Western culture and in patriarchal systems or any oppressive system, what is God? God is money. God is not the soul. God is not God. God is money, right? So the confusion because of then the projection on money, that rather being a beautiful divine resource to support our lives and the lives of all on the planet, that it is something that needs to be hoarded, that it needs to be clung to, that is scarce to get. So when we get it, we must hang on to, rather than that energy you were talking about, which was it wanted to have fun. It wanted to play. It was available and relational with all who were available to it.
Yeah, and I think that brings me back to because sexuality is not just what we think it is, right? We've done some weird things with sexuality. It can be It can be sensuality. It can be playful. It can be a little flirtatious, right? Sexuality is about being alive. And so sexuality can be expressed in so many different ways that line up with creativity and line up with and support that currency of money.
And it does come from the same place, and we don't always recognize it. I think it can come in so many forms. I remember a long time ago, I was performing in a play. I was in my late 20s, and I was in a committed monogamous relationship with my daughter's father. And I became very attracted to my co-star in the show. And I was kind of flirting around with wanting to have, I don't know, kiss him. I don't know. I didn't really want to leave my partner, but there was a thing there, and we clearly both felt it. And I was able to speak with my daughter's dad about it, who I was in relationship with, and he said something very wise to me because he was a wise person.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he was a wise person.
And he said to me, well, you know, is it possible that you just have such a powerful creative connection with Joe, that the energetic is just so much excitement, and you can really fully channel that brilliance into the role? And as soon as he said that, I went, bingo. And it was like all that energy I wanted to project on him, like sexual, I have to have an affair, it's going to be a thing between me and my guy. He was able to actually help me reframe that. And I've been doing that reframe ever since. So sometimes when I'm attracted to somebody or outside of my partnership, I'll ask myself, am I interested really in a romantic connection with this person? Or is this about a creative connection? Is this about a playful connection? Is this our two inner children want to hang out together? And over the years, that has served me really well. But sometimes it's like this well of energy. And then that perhaps we have more of a choice than we think we do, how to focus it.
Well, and we don't have leaders. We're not taught, most of us growing up, how to handle those energies.
Yeah, and we're afraid of them. And we think they're just going to take us over, ruin our business. We're going to have these dramas. And we see it happens all the time in leadership and politics and heads of organizations and in families.
With children and as teenagers, right? I mean, we really get it in adolescence when our hormones are going. And really, there are no wisdom leaders to teach us how to think about and work with those powerful energies, which, really, I mean, it takes me back to kind of like the relationship between love and shame, because when all of that can be allowed to belong, right, it can rest in this field of love where everything has its place, and then we get to have access to our full humanity. I feel like shame and trauma are so connected, that our shame-based culture has really traumatized us. I think we actually, and that takes me to kind of what I've been working on in the field of mental health and COVID, is that I actually think there's so much shame and splitting happening right now, rather than people coming together and feeling a sense of love and solidarity in the face of the challenges that we're facing, and that there are all these diverse ways of relating to it, but that in the end, it's something that we share. We're all human. We're all vulnerable. We're all going to think about it a little bit differently, but we have taken our trauma, our collective trauma, and it's driving us into these places of shame, creating bigger division. And when that happens, it's like we almost shut down the alchemical process. And I want to go back to the original quote, when all those elements can be there, that's when the alchemical process can start to heat up and cook. But we have been taught to shut those things down because we don't know what that is. We don't know how to handle it. We don't know.
Well, it's a big energy to be willing to lean into and let it run through your body too, right?
We shut those big energies down all the time instead of knowing that they're natural and normal and that they aren't us, right? That they're running through us. And I just, it's really sad. I'm starting to think about, Paul Zach's work, the neuroeconomist, about, and I've talked about him on this podcast before, and his work with trust and close bonded intimate relationships. right? That oxytocin is produced in safe, intimate connection,
Totally.
and that oxytocin is what produces trust, and that the countries that have the highest levels of trust are the most economically sound. So it takes us full circle. Almost, we can track it spiritually, we can track it from a neurobiological standpoint.
And economically.
And it ties into economics. And so it actually takes me back to that place of money is part of nature.
And it is relational. We're in relationship with it.
Everything, and nature is relational. Everything has its place and its process, but we're so afraid of our own nature that we've shut it down. And I do believe that we are having like unprecedented collective trauma.
And I think unprecedented collective liberation.
Both.
Because at the same time, I'm definitely in touch with people every day who are liberating, who are really breaking free right now from old stories. It's that radical energy in the collective. It is, to me, what's been breaking out of the box. And the fact that we've gotten our backs so up against the wall here in America in particular, okay, our backs are so up against the wall. Something's got to break. And it's a liberatory energy that is breaking through. We don't know what that's going to look like or how it's going to play out. But
well, let's talk about how it's playing out for us, because you and I both are having some profound liberation and shifts in this time of isolation, right? We've been driven inside, and that's creating its own alchemical process.
And it is, and we're deepening certain relationships. So we're in isolation, but not in isolation, very much in relationship with each other and others in our sphere.
Exactly. So, you and I have both had recent sort of breakthroughs around our business models. Really literally within 48 hours or the same day.
The same day, actually.
It was the same day. It was this Monday.
It was.
That's incredible.
Why don't you talk about what yours has been and what it's moving into, and I can do the same, and then we can sort of compare notes.
Well, I have a training program in systemic family constellation therapy or constellation work. And that's work that started in Germany and has, some roots in South Africa and was brought to Santa Fe by the person who taught me. And I took it to Nashville, and I've been invited to bring it to New Orleans. And so I have been teaching and training and leading in, workshops for 4 years, and it's blossoming like this. It's the time. This is the time for this work. And it hit me because it's blossoming in such a beautiful way. And I thought, I started having this, it was almost like a dream, like a daydream. It was actually not even that. It felt like a love story. Like if I just really call it what it is, it felt like a love story. And I don't know how a business model can be a love story, but mine is. So the people I've been working with who are in my training group, some of them have been with me for 4 years, and 3 of them are just getting ready to graduate. So they feel like family to me, and they're people that I trust, and we've gone through a lot together. I've grown, they've grown, we've certainly grown together, and I just thought, they can all go out and start their own businesses, and they can become, however they want to apply the work, and maybe some of them will end up becoming trainers, and that's all fine. But there is a fundamental gap that I see in healing work where there can be this element of competition that comes in, and people they don't play fair or friendly. There's a lot of envy and jealousy. And I started thinking, how could love go to that place? Right. And so we did actually constellation work around it. And I was expressing to them this, my dream, which is my love story for my business, is that it become like a co-op or an ESOP, employee stock option plan, which is that you become part of the owner of the company as you put time in and you work in it. So you're invested in it, and that the decisions are made by the group, right? And it was so incredible for me when I was able to voice this, because all of a sudden I realized, one of my, you've talked about the zone of genius, and that came out for me when I was managing a hospice where when I took this hospice over, there were 9 patients. And in 18 months, we had 73 patients without marketing. And it was all because it was so inclusive. And I worked as a nurse and an advocate on a business level, and I loved them. And I loved the patients, but it wasn't about competing with other organizations. It was about how can this be sustainable and holistic in a way where if I really look at the staff and I'm their advocate, they're going to go out and they're going to do this incredible work. And that's what happened. It was word of mouth, right? I mean, I had nurses knocking on the door begging to work there because I negotiated caseload maxes, and so that they actually, weren't killing themselves serving dying people. I mean,
Yes. Oh my gosh, totally, Camille.
but it was one of the best experiences of my life. I was good at it. And all of a sudden now I'm in this place where I'm like, oh, wow, if I actually had a team and we could work together through love in that way of deep service and we really share, I just feel like that part of me, I can feel it coming back. And it's interesting that it doesn't come back in my solo business. I don't have a lot of juice to be famous or to be the best constellation facilitator or to be known for something, right? That isn't what drives me. What drives me is to apply the constellation work to business and actually do it differently, that we actually become the work.
We do.
We're not just offering the work, we become the work.
Totally.
So I'd love to hear your story about how and your epiphany on the same day.
That was crazy, but amazing. What I love that you said is, how can a business model be a love story? I want to say, how can it not be? Maybe this is the restorying.
I think it is restorying.
Restorying is the business model is the love story. Yeah. So as you know, well, I've partnered with different people on projects. I was a solo entrepreneur for years with one business assistant. And now I have this team, but it's really a family business. It's a chosen family business, and that would be what I would call my team. We're multi-generational. We're diverse. We're male and female. We're somebody on the team who is almost 30 years younger than me, who I'm also mentoring, and she offers so much. The person who's running my operations and stepping into that role, but also we're not doing something super binary where he's just that, because he's also a gifted therapist, and comes out of both a business background and a social work background. So he'll be doing some facilitating with groups as well. We met on Match.com 12 years ago when we were both going through divorces.
I remember.
And navigated a dear friendship where now he, lives in Nashville. And so for me, I've just always had a vision of people in circles on stages all over the world sharing their stories. And now the stages are online and on circles on Zoom, and they will again be on stages around the world or circles of people on groups. But to me, story is the most powerful, most accessible, and underutilized art form. And we're literally human animals wired for story, and it changes everything. So for me to make this process accessible on a really large level and the way it could really impact in the way that's always been my vision, I've had to surrender to being deeply helped, which underneath I realize I have always desired. So I'm letting myself have my desire of being held and helped by others, and letting others who know how to create structure for me create that. And that's something I remember hearing from a marketing guru person years ago. Money loves structure. So I'm not a structure person except when it comes to story, but so this is a business structure where I'm surrendering and letting others around me hold me, but build structures that hold me and can hold our students and clients and all of this. And, it's a place for me to actually actualize not only my vision, but my values of diversity and equity and inclusion, age-wise, race-wise, gender-wise. And my team now has somebody, in the Philippines. My team is grown, so now I have invited in more Black coaches. So it's my way to live my values. And that's my love stories. And we're set up to be much more profitable than we could have ever been alone. We just had our first launch, as a team, and it was, I don't know, I'm not good at math, but what we brought in 10 days is what would be equivalent to what I'd normally bring in 3 months, myself and an assistant, and sort of the do-it-yourself model. So, and that's the part about getting financially not just stable, but abundant and thriving, I think, by standing in our right place. We talk a lot about that in constellation work and even in the story work. What is our right place where everybody is moving and flowing with what they love and what they desire? And the desire is to do well and do the work from a high quality place because it aligns with what they love and what their gifts are versus the sort of workaround. So that's what's bubbling up, for me. And I'm just so grateful. And it's been a long, hard road and walk to get here because these business models we're speaking of aren't so accessible, at least in the circle of healers and artists that I know.
Well, I was involved with SCORE, and I had a SCORE mentor for, I think, 4 years, and an attorney, the COO of a hospital, he was a much more traditional business person. They both had great hearts, but yeah, these models weren't part of how they teach people to be in business. And, we talked a little bit earlier about humility, about how we serve as leaders, that to be a true leader, you're actually kind of serving from the bottom up, right? It's this thing of you push people up, because when you push them up, you're like, we then become the tree trunk. And as we get closer to dying, we move into the roots of the tree. And then we get to have all those branches out there, not only in our family lineage, but also in our business lineage.
Yeah.
And I mean, my vision for myself is really that we can train people in their own neighborhoods to do this work, that this is grassroots, that there are people all over the world trained really well, not just a weekend or a little 6-month training program, but this is like a true mentorship program, right? Where you learn it's like learning a new language. It doesn't happen overnight.
No, of course not. No depth-based work does.
It doesn't. But for people to be able to take it in their own neighborhoods and communities, that's really my vision.
I love that.
And because so many people are like, well, I'm the expert in this, and I go in and I work with, and I'm just realizing as we're talking that I think in a way, and I'm not even conscious of it, but I think my soul is so driven to do this because it's my way of decolonizing business.
Yeah, totally. I used that phrase today with somebody.
Did you?
Yes, I said we're decolonizing business. We're decolonizing our stories about business.
Yeah, I think we really are, because when we colonize business, we want to be the expert. We want to be the one who's known. We want to take it over.
And it's lonely. I mean,
it's lonely, and it isn't sustainable.
It is, and it feeds the ego. And I always found it lonely. I didn't want it, but also sometimes from a scarcity place, we don't know there's an option good options. It was like, I never even thought I'd run a business. And yet here I am, here you are, running our own businesses. But this is the feminine thing too, the circles of people supporting circles of people. And again, that's the indigenous way. Circles supporting circles of humans.
That's right. And I did a constellation with my group for the training and sort of the some of the lineage of the training. And one of the things that came up was that we're creating a circle lineage, not a line lineage.
That's right.
And when the constellation ended up in a circle, that's when everyone was happy and in their right place. Otherwise, there was competition in the lineage.
That makes
there
so
was
much
competition.
sense to me. Of course there was.
Yeah, like I want to be the one in front. This one representing this thing wanted to be the one in front, didn't want the new one to be in front of them, right? And that happens in families. So
between mothers and daughters, fathers and sons.
Well, in all yeah. I mean, in so many different ways, we can be out of
the sister wound,
out of alignment, out of order. So this is really exciting that we're actually able to walk out these. It's like really being able to have a love story based in spiritual truths that we're learning as we go with other people, creating a new way of being. And we sure need it. I need it, right? I mean, I'm just speaking for myself. I'm so ready.
Oh my God. Beyond ready. It's been
it's hard to do it alone.
Hard work. And there's there's a relief in just the acknowledgement. There's no doing any of this alone.
No, there's not. No.
And that was sort of the lie in the conditioning anyway.
And in a way, that's one of the gifts of the pandemic. Like we're sort of being driven inward and downward, right? To kind of, whether we like it or not, and it's not cognitive, and a lot of it isn't conscious, we're being driven to some deeper places than we're used to operating from, and it can be really uncomfortable. But beautiful things are blossoming out of it, so... About out of time, but what a great conversation this has been. I love it. And there's going to be more, no doubt.
Thanks, Camille.
Thanks, Tanya.
Thank you for joining Camille and Tanya for this episode of Restorying the Culture. If you were inspired, we would deeply appreciate it if you would leave a review on iTunes or any other platform where you heard our podcast. For more ongoing inspiration and support, please join our no-cost global Facebook community, Restorying the Culture. You can support our podcast by making a donation here. And remember, we are each restoring the culture as we restory our own lives. See you next time.